Good evening, class. How is everyone tonight? So I just wanted to do a very quick summary, and I wanted to point out a few things regarding our reading on Rousseau. So I have 4 points that I want to make. First thing that popped out at me was his thought process on how important it is regarding the innocence of children and how children and babies are born innocent, and it's through outside influences that they start to develop their thought processes outside of what nature originally what their origin of nature is. So when we have to think about the people that they are coming into contact with, so it's very important to restrict the exposure of outside influences when they are young, because it's through that we're able to, in a sense, keep them as close to nature as possible. Sometimes outside influences can create situations that then unhappy children. So, for example, let's just take for commercials. Commercials sometimes show children all these toys and all these magnificent things. And when the child can't get those things, they become unhappy. They don't understand why they can't get them. They don't understand why, their friend in school can have it, but they can't have it. So it's very important that we are careful of the influences that are surrounding our children. The other thing that stood out for me was the thought of imagination. And it says that restriction of outside exposure also has to do with imagination. But the fact that imagination should come from within the child, it shouldn't be outside influences that are pushing things onto the child, and then those become part of the child's imagination, because that can also lead to, an unhappy child when they realize there are certain things that are just unattainable for them. So anytime there are outside influences are introducing something to a child, it should be something that is attainable to them. It is something that they should be able to reach. The other thing that I found interesting is that the thought that the way children learn best, which is through experiment, exploration. And I remember as a kid, I think the things that stood out for me and still stand out for me the most are anything that I got my hands dirty in and I was part of it. So something as simple as climbing a tree was an exploration for me, but that climbing of a tree taught me that was my one-on-one with nature, it taught me to respect nature. And, climbing a tree, I might have come across a bird's nest. So that taught me another part of nature. And it was through that exploration on my own as a child that I learned different, I picked up new knowledge, or knowledge that was being exposed to me directly through nature. I was also very lucky that my mother felt that she should have been a guide for me. And that's also something that's pointed out, that as parents and as teachers, we should be there to help guide our children and guide the children in their thought process, but not quote unquote teach them, not teach them lessons, but help them to learn lessons on their own and help them to discover. Self-discovery is very important. And then the last thing I want to point out was the fact of he also feels that natural development in stages, and that it is important to watch children in their process, and are they picking up the same way? And if not, then you do have to differentiate. And that's something very large in part in our teaching philosophy today, is differentiating, especially when we have inclusive classrooms, that we have to be able to take one lesson and differentiate it maybe between our general ed students, and then we have to differentiate it sometimes 4 different ways, depending on what the IEP might call for. So I think those were the biggest points that I came across. I hope you guys enjoyed my little review, and have a good night.